I stood by the window, gazing at the shimmering city lights below, a silent witness to the vibrant life outside. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts when suddenly I heard Amanda's phone ring. She was in the next room, unaware that I was eavesdropping. Each word she spoke sliced through me like a razor-sharp knife. "Hi, Austin." Her voice was soft, almost affectionate. "Yes, I can meet you tomorrow night. Same place?" A cold chill ran down my spine. Who was this Austin? Why was she meeting him? My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to hear more. Amanda's voice lowered to a whisper, but I could still catch snippets of their conversation. "Yes, he's busy with work," she continued. "It's fine. He won't suspect a thing." I clenched my fists, struggling to maintain my composure. Amanda and I had been married for 10 years. We shared everything, or so I thought. Lately, she had been acting distant, coming home late from work and making excuses for her absence. I had brushed off my suspicions, attributing her behavior to stress, but this call confirmed my worst fears. The conversation ended, and I quickly moved away from the window, not wanting her to know I had been listening. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the conversation I had overheard. I needed to know more about this Austin, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions without solid evidence. Amanda emerged from the room, her phone still in her hand. She glanced at me and forced a smile, but I could see the tension in her eyes. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just a colleague from work," she replied nonchalantly. "We have a big project coming up." I nodded, pretending to believe her. Inside, I was seething with anger and hurt. How could she betray me like this? The trust that had taken years to build was crumbling before my eyes. I knew I had to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing the devastating reality that our marriage was in jeopardy. In the weeks following that fateful phone call, Amanda's behavior became increasingly erratic. She spent more nights out, claiming work meetings or dinners with clients. Each excuse she gave was met with a growing pit of suspicion in my stomach. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. One evening, as Amanda was getting ready to leave for yet another work dinner, I decided to investigate further. She was in the bathroom, so I seized the opportunity to check her phone. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her messages. There it was again. Austin. Their exchanges were frequent and flirtatious, filled with inside jokes and affectionate nicknames. My heart sank as I read each line. "Looking forward to tonight. I miss you," read one message from Austin. Amanda had replied with a string of heart emojis and a playful, "Can't wait to see you too." I quickly put the phone back in its place and tried to calm myself. When Amanda emerged, dressed in a sleek black dress and heels, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "Don't wait up for me, okay?" I forced a smile and nodded, but my mind was already racing with plans. I needed to find out who this Austin was and how deep their relationship went. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every interaction with Amanda in my mind, searching for clues I might have missed. The next morning, I resolved to follow her. The following evening, Amanda told me she was meeting a client for dinner. I waited until she left, then grabbed my keys and followed her car at a safe distance. She drove across town to a high-end restaurant, far from her usual haunts. I parked a few blocks away and watched as she got out and met a tall, well-dressed man at the entrance. They embraced warmly before heading inside. I couldn't bear to sit in the car any longer, so I decided to get a closer look. I entered the restaurant, trying to blend in with the other patrons. I spotted them at a cozy corner table, laughing and holding hands. The man, presumably Austin, had an air of confidence and wealth that was impossible to ignore. I felt a surge of anger and jealousy as I watched them. I knew I couldn't confront them here, so I took a deep breath and left the restaurant. As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The evidence was undeniable now. Amanda was having an affair with Austin. The life we had built over the past decade was unraveling before my eyes. When Amanda returned home later that night, she acted as if nothing had happened. I played along, pretending to be oblivious, but inside I was devastated. I needed to confront her, but I wanted to gather more evidence first. I had to be sure that there was no room for denial. In the days that followed, I kept a close watch on Amanda's actions. I noticed more signs: secretive phone calls, hushed conversations, and frequent absences. Each new discovery added fuel to the fire of my suspicions. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together the puzzle of her betrayal. Despite the mounting evidence, I struggled with how to confront her. Our 10-year marriage had seen its share of ups and downs, but this felt like an insurmountable breach of trust. The woman I loved had become a stranger, entangled in a web of deceit. As I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation, I couldn't help but mourn the loss of the life we had shared. The dreams we had built together were crumbling, replaced by a painful reality I never thought possible. All that remained was the truth, and I knew I had to face it, no matter how devastating it might be. One Friday evening, Amanda told me she had an overnight business trip. As she packed her bags, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. I knew this was my chance to uncover the full extent of her betrayal. I needed proof, something undeniable that would force her to confront the truth. After she left, I called Anthony, my best friend since college. Anthony had always been my rock, and I knew I could count on him now. I explained the situation and he agreed to help me. We devised a plan. I would follow Amanda to her business trip, and Anthony would be my backup, ready to step in if things went south. I followed Amanda's car from a distance as she drove out of town. She stopped at a luxury hotel on the outskirts. I parked a few blocks away and watched as she got out of the car, looking around nervously before entering the hotel. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for Anthony to arrive. When he did, we approached the hotel together. Anthony had a knack for blending in, and he managed to strike up a conversation with the receptionist while I stayed out of sight. He learned that Amanda had checked in under her maiden name and that she was sharing a suite with Austin. Armed with this information, I felt a surge of anger and determination. We made our way to the elevators, and Anthony used his charm to persuade the cleaning staff to let us up to the floor where Amanda and Austin were staying. My hands were shaking as we walked down the hallway, my heart pounding louder with each step. We stopped in front of their suite, and I took a deep breath before knocking on the door. There was a moment of silence, and then the door opened. Amanda stood there, her eyes widening in shock when she saw me. Behind her, Austin appeared, looking equally surprised. "Jake, what are you doing here?" Amanda stammered, her voice shaking. I pushed past her and stepped into the room, my eyes blazing with anger. "What am I doing here? What are you doing here, Amanda? With him?" Austin tried to intervene, but Anthony stepped forward, blocking his path. "This is between them," he said firmly. Amanda's face turned pale, and she began to cry. "Jake, I can explain." "Explain what?" I shouted, unable to contain my fury. "Explain how you've been lying to me, how you've been sneaking around with him behind my back." Tears streamed down Amanda's face as she tried to find the words. I never meant for this to happen. It just did." Austin, clearly uncomfortable, attempted to speak. "Jake, I know this is hard, but Amanda and we care about each other." I turned to him, my fists clenched. "You stay out of this. You have no idea what you've done to our family." The room was filled with tension, the air thick with the weight of our confrontation. Amanda's sobs filled the silence, and I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal wash over me. I had loved this woman with all my heart, and now she was standing in front of me, exposed as a liar and a cheat. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Amanda, I need you to leave. Now. Go home and pack your things." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Jake, please. Can we talk about this?" I shook my head. "There's nothing left to talk about. Our marriage is over." Austin moved to comfort her, but I stopped him with a glare. "You both need to leave. Now." Anthony stepped forward, guiding Amanda out of the room. Austin followed, casting a final regretful glance in my direction. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto the bed, my strength drained. The reality of what had just happened hit me like a tidal wave. My marriage was truly over. Anthony sat down beside me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Jake, I'm so sorry, man." I nodded, unable to speak. The pain was overwhelming, but deep down, I knew I had made the right decision. There was no going back now. It was time to pick up the pieces of my life and start anew. The next day, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. The events of the previous night played over and over in my mind. Amanda's tear-streaked face, Austin's guilty eyes, and the finality of my words. Our marriage is over. I knew I couldn't just let it end like that. I needed closure, and that meant confronting Austin directly. I called Anthony to let him know my plan. He offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to do this alone. I needed to face Austin and hear his side of the story, no matter how painful it might be. I found out where Austin worked through a bit of online sleuthing. He was a high-profile businessman, and his office was in a towering skyscraper downtown. I took a deep breath and walked into the sleek, modern lobby. The receptionist eyed me curiously as I asked for Austin. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked politely. "No, but it's urgent," I replied, my voice firm. She hesitated, but eventually picked up the phone and called Austin's office. A few moments later, she nodded and told me I could go up. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. When the doors finally opened, I stepped out into a plush, expansive office space. Austin was waiting for me at the end of the hallway, his expression unreadable. "Jake," he said, extending his hand. "Come on in." I ignored his hand and walked past him into his office. It was impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city. I turned to face him, my anger barely contained. "Austin, I'm not here for pleasantries. I want answers," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. He sighed and gestured for me to sit down. "Jake, I understand. You deserve to know the truth." I remained standing, glaring at him. "Start talking." Austin nodded, running a hand through his hair. "Amanda and I met at a business conference about 6 months ago. At first it was just casual conversations, but as we got to know each other, we realized we had a connection. It wasn't planned, and I never intended to hurt you." "A connection?" I spat. "You're talking about my wife, the mother of my children. Do you have any idea what you've done?" He looked genuinely remorseful. "I know I've caused a lot of pain, and I'm sorry for that. But Jake," Amanda was unhappy. She felt neglected, and I gave her the attention she was missing. I felt a surge of guilt mixed with my anger. Had I really been so blind to Amanda's feelings? "That doesn't justify what you did," I said, my voice cracking. "You could have walked away. You both could have." Austin nodded, his expression somber. "You're right. We should have, but we didn't, and now we're here." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "What now, Austin? Are you planning to be with her? To take my place in her life?" He shook his head. "That's not my decision, it's Amanda's. But if she chooses to be with me, I'll do everything I can to support her and your kids. I'm not trying to replace you, Jake." His words hit me hard. I realized that as much as I hated him, he wasn't entirely to blame. Amanda had made her choices too. "Just take care of her," I said finally, "and make sure she's happy. That's all I want." Austin nodded. "I promise, Jake." I turned to leave, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. As I walked out of his office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had faced the man who had come between Amanda and me, and while it didn't erase the pain, it gave me a sense of closure. Now, it was time to focus on rebuilding my life and finding a new path forward. Back in the elevator, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Returning home after my confrontation with Austin, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The encounter had provided some closure, but there was one more person I needed to face: Amanda. We had to address the reality of our situation and make decisions about our future. Amanda was waiting for me in the living room when I arrived. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked fragile, like a delicate vase on the edge of a shelf, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. I took a deep breath and sat down across from her, my emotions churning inside. "Jake," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant for it to go this far." I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Amanda, we need to talk. We can't keep pretending this will fix itself. Our marriage, it's broken." She looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't." "Why, Amanda?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why did you do it? Was it something I did? Something I didn't do?" She took a deep breath, wiping her tears away. "It wasn't about you, Jake. It was about me. I felt lost, invisible. Our lives became so routine, so predictable. And then Austin came along, and he made me feel alive again. But I know now it was a mistake, and I've hurt you deeply." I sighed. running a hand through my hair. We both made mistakes, Amanda. I should have noticed, should have been there for you more. But what you did, it's something I can't just forget. She nodded, her shoulders slumping. I understand. I just want to make things right, whatever that means. I looked at her, feeling a pang of sorrow. Amanda, I think the best thing for both of us is to move on. We've been holding on to something that's no longer there. We need to think about the kids, about how to co-parent and give them stability. She looked devastated, but she nodded in agreement. You're right. They need us to be strong, even if we're not together. We spent the next few hours discussing the logistics of our separation. We agreed to seek joint custody of the children, to keep their lives as normal as possible. It was a painful conversation, but it was necessary. For the first time in a long time, we were honest with each other, laying bare our feelings and our regrets. As the evening drew to a close, I felt a strange sense of calm. The storm had passed, and while the wreckage was significant, there was a path forward. We could rebuild our lives separately, focusing on the well-being of our children and finding our own ways to heal. Amanda stood up, looking at me with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. Thank you, Jake, for being understanding, even when I didn't deserve it. I managed a small smile. We're both doing our best, Amanda. It's all we can do. She nodded and walked towards the door. As she left the room, I felt a heavy weight lift from my shoulders. The future was uncertain, but at least now we had a plan. We had taken the first steps towards healing, towards finding peace after the chaos. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be difficult days ahead, moments of doubt and pain, but I also knew that I had the strength to face them. I had faced the truth, confronted the betrayal, and survived. And now, it was time to start a new chapter in my life, one built on honesty, resilience, and hope. Days turned into weeks, and life started to find a new rhythm. Amanda and I settled into our new roles as co-parents, focusing on the well-being of our children. Yet, there was a lingering question in my mind that refused to be silenced. Why had Amanda betrayed me for Austin? I needed to know the full truth to find closure. One evening, while sorting through some old documents, I stumbled upon an unfamiliar envelope tucked away in Amanda's desk drawer. My curiosity got the best of me, and I opened it. Inside was a series of bank statements and receipts that painted a disturbing picture. Large sums of money had been transferred from Austin to Amanda over the past several months. My heart raced as I examined the documents. Why would Austin be giving Amanda so much money? The transactions were substantial, far beyond what could be considered normal or innocent. A sickening realization began to dawn on me. Amanda's affair with Austin wasn't just about emotional or physical attraction. It was also about money. I confronted Amanda the next day. She was at our house to pick up the kids when I handed her the envelope. Amanda, we need to talk about this, I said, my voice filled with a mix of anger and betrayal. Her face turned pale as she saw the documents. Jake, I can explain, she said, her voice trembling. I shook my head. I need the truth, Amanda. Why was Austin giving you money? What was really going on between you two? Tears welled up in her eyes as she sat down at the kitchen table. Jake, I didn't want you to find out like this. It wasn't just about the money, but it did play a part. I felt a surge of anger. So you were with him for his money? Were you using him, Amanda? She shook her head vigorously. No, it wasn't like that. It started off as just a friendship, but then things got complicated. Austin offered to help me financially when he found out we were struggling. He said he wanted to support me, to make things easier for us. I stared at her in disbelief. Struggling? We were managing just fine. Why didn't you come to me if you felt we needed more money? Amanda's tears fell freely now. I was scared, Jake. I didn't want to burden you. I thought I could handle it on my own, and then things got out of control. I made a terrible mistake, and I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I slumped into a chair, trying to process everything. The betrayal felt even deeper now, knowing that it was also tied to financial deceit. So you stayed with him because he was giving you money? Because he made you feel secure? She nodded, unable to meet my gaze. I thought I was doing it for us, for the kids. But I know now how wrong I was. I should have trusted you, should have been honest from the start. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and pity for the woman I once loved. Amanda, you should have come to me. We could have faced it together. Now everything is shattered. She reached out, her voice desperate. Jake, please believe me when I say I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you this way. I lost my way. I stood up, needing to put some distance between us. Amanda, I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, but for the sake of our kids, we need to find a way to move forward. I need time to process this. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand, Jake. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. As she left, I felt a heavy weight in my chest. The truth was out, but it didn't bring the closure I had hoped for. Instead, it opened up a new wound, one that would take time to heal. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, but I also knew that I had to keep moving forward for myself and for my children. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life for the sake of our children. The revelation of Amanda's financial entanglement with Austin had deepened the wound of her betrayal. But I had to put my emotions aside and prioritize our kids. They needed stability and reassurance in this tumultuous time. Amanda and I worked out a schedule for joint custody. We agreed to maintain a calm and supportive environment for the children, ensuring they felt loved and secure despite the changes in our family structure. It was challenging to interact with Amanda civilly, given the lingering resentment, but we managed for the kids. One Saturday afternoon, I took the kids to the park. It was a sunny day, and their laughter as they played on the swings and slides brought a smile to my face. For a few hours, I could forget about the heartache and focus on the pure joy of being a father. Dad, push me higher, my daughter April called out, her face beaming with excitement. I laughed and gave her swing a strong push. Higher you go! Watching my children reminded me of the importance of resilience. They were adapting to the new normal with surprising ease, and their happiness became my anchor. I resolved to be there for them, no matter how difficult things got. That evening, after tucking the kids into bed, I sat down to go through some financial paperwork. I needed to understand the extent of the financial situation Amanda had created and how to move forward. As I sifted through the documents, I realized how much strain our finances had been under. Amanda's secret dealings with Austin had temporarily alleviated the pressure, but now I had to find a sustainable solution. I reached out to a financial advisor the next day. Sitting in his office, I felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. I explained the situation and showed him the documents. The advisor, a middle-aged man named Frank, nodded thoughtfully. Jake, it looks like you're dealing with quite a mess here, but it's not insurmountable. We can work out a plan to get you back on track. We spent hours going over budgets, debts, and potential solutions. Frank's calm demeanor and practical advice gave me a sense of hope. By the end of the meeting, I had a clear action plan to stabilize my finances and ensure a secure future for my children. As I left the office, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was taking control of my life, step by step. The road ahead was long, but I was determined to make it work. Back home, I set up a dedicated workspace and began implementing the financial plan. I cut unnecessary expenses, restructured debt, and focused on creating a more balanced budget. It was tedious work, but each small victory felt like a step towards reclaiming my independence. Amanda and I continued to communicate primarily about the children. There were moments of tension, but we kept our interactions civil. One evening after dropping off the kids, Amanda lingered at the door. Jake, can we talk for a moment? She asked, her voice hesitant. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. We sat down in the living room, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, Amanda began, but I want to apologize again. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything, but I truly regret my actions. I sighed, looking at her with a mixture of sadness and exhaustion. Amanda, I appreciate the apology, but it's going to take time for me to process everything. Right now, my focus is on the kids and getting our lives back on track. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I understand. I just hope someday we can find a way to forgive each other and move on. I didn't respond immediately. The pain was still too fresh, the wounds too raw, but part of me hoped for the same. Forgiveness seemed like a distant dream, but perhaps in time it would become a possibility. For now, I had to focus on what I could control. My children needed me, and I needed to be strong for them. Each day was a step forward, and with each step, I felt a little more capable of facing the future. As I watched Amanda leave, I knew that the journey to healing and rebuilding would be long and challenging. But I was ready to face it, one day at a time. The weeks that followed were a blur of responsibilities and adjustments. Balancing work, parenting, and the emotional fallout of my failed marriage left little room for anything else. Yet amidst the chaos, I found solace in the support of my friends, especially Anthony. He had been my rock through this entire ordeal, and I leaned on him more than ever. One evening after the kids were asleep, Anthony came over. We sat on the porch with a couple of beers, the cool night air providing a welcome relief from the day's stresses. The stars overhead seemed to promise a better future, and for the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of hope. "How are you holding up, Jake?" Anthony asked, taking a swig of his beer. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "It's tough, man. Some days are better than others, but I keep reminding myself that I have to be strong for the kids." Anthony nodded. "You're doing a great job with them. They need you now more than ever." "Thanks, Anthony. I couldn't have gotten through this without you," I said, genuinely grateful for his unwavering support. He shrugged modestly. "That's what friends are for. And hey, if you ever need a break, don't hesitate to ask. I'm here for you, man." We fell into a comfortable silence, the weight of recent events hanging between us. I knew Anthony wanted to help me find a way to move forward, and he had been subtly suggesting that I get back out into the world, meet new people, and start living again. "You know," Anthony began cautiously, "there's a new place that just opened downtown. It's a nice spot, with good music and a great crowd. Maybe you should come with me one of these nights, just to unwind a bit." I chuckled, shaking my head. "I don't know, Anthony. I don't think I'm ready for that yet." He gave me a reassuring smile. "I get it, Jake, but sometimes a change of scenery can do wonders. No pressure, just think about it." I appreciated his efforts to cheer me up. The idea of socializing felt daunting, but I knew he was right. I couldn't let myself be consumed by bitterness and sadness. I had to find a way to rebuild my life, not just for my children, but for myself. The next few days, I mulled over Anthony's suggestion. I realized I had been isolating myself, wallowing in my pain and focusing solely on the kids. It was time to take a step towards healing, even if it felt uncomfortable. The following weekend, I finally agreed to join Anthony at the new place downtown. It was a trendy bar with a lively atmosphere, filled with people laughing, dancing, and enjoying themselves. The noise and energy were overwhelming at first, but Anthony's presence was a steadying force. We found a spot at the bar, and Anthony ordered us a couple of drinks. "Just relax, Jake. Tonight is about letting go and having some fun." I nodded, trying to push aside my apprehension. As the night went on, I found myself easing into the surroundings. The music was infectious, and the company was surprisingly enjoyable. Anthony introduced me to some of his friends, and their easygoing nature helped me relax. At one point, Anthony nudged me and pointed toward a group of women nearby. "See that blonde over there? Her name's Sarah. She's really nice. Why don't you go say hi?" I hesitated, feeling a pang of anxiety. "I don't know, Anthony. It's been a long time since I've done anything like this." He gave me an encouraging pat on the back. "Just be yourself, Jake. No expectations, no pressure, just a friendly conversation." Taking a deep breath, I approached the group and introduced myself. To my surprise, Sarah was warm and friendly, and we struck up a conversation about music and travel. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine connection with someone new. It was a small step, but it reminded me that life had more to offer beyond the pain and betrayal. As the night drew to a close, I thanked Anthony for pushing me out of my comfort zone. "I needed this," I admitted. "It feels good to laugh and talk to new people." Anthony grinned. "I'm glad you came, Jake. This is just the beginning. There's a whole world out there waiting for you." Driving home, I felt a sense of renewal. The road to healing would be long and winding, but with friends like Anthony by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. It was time to embrace the future, to find strength in the support of those who cared about me, and to start building a new life for myself and my children. The day of our divorce hearing arrived faster than I had anticipated. Despite the emotional turbulence of the past few months, Amanda and I had managed to come to a mutual understanding. We both wanted the process to be as smooth and conflict-free as possible, especially for the sake of our children. We stood in the courthouse waiting for our case to be called. The atmosphere was somber, but there was a sense of resolution in the air. Amanda and I exchanged a few quiet words, both of us aware that this was the final step in ending our 10-year marriage. When our case was called, we walked into the courtroom and took our seats. The judge, a stern but fair-looking woman, began to review our file. The proceedings were surprisingly quick. Amanda and I had already agreed on the division of assets, custody arrangements, and financial support, so there was little left to contest. The judge looked up from the paperwork and addressed us. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I see that you have come to an amicable agreement regarding your divorce. Is there anything either of you would like to add or contest before I finalize this?" Amanda shook her head. "No, Your Honor. We just want to move forward for the sake of our children." I nodded in agreement. "That's right. We want to make this as easy as possible for them." The judge gave a small nod. "Very well. Given that both parties are in agreement, I hereby grant the dissolution of your marriage. The terms outlined in your settlement are now legally binding." The sound of the gavel striking the block echoed in the room, and just like that, it was over. Our marriage was officially dissolved. I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow wash over me. The chapter was closed, but it still left an ache in my heart. Amanda and I exited the courtroom together, our lawyers trailing behind us. We stepped outside into the bright sunlight, and for a moment, we stood there in silence. The weight of the finality of our divorce hung between us. "Thank you, Jake," Amanda said quietly, "for being understanding and for putting the kids first. I know this hasn't been easy." I nodded, looking at her with a mixture of emotions. "Thank you, Amanda. I hope we can both find some peace now and focus on being the best parents we can be." She gave a small, sad smile. "That's all I want, too." We parted ways, and I walked to my car, feeling a sense of closure. The divorce process had been swift and uncontested, a testament to our mutual desire to move forward without unnecessary conflict. It was a bittersweet ending, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Driving home, I reflected on the journey ahead. There would be challenges, no doubt, but I felt more prepared to face them. I had supportive friends, a plan for financial stability, and most importantly, my children, who remain my greatest source of strength and motivation. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw the kids playing in the yard. Their laughter filled the air, and I felt a surge of determination. This was my new reality, and I was ready to embrace it. With the divorce behind me, I could focus on building a future that was filled with hope, love, and new possibilities. With the divorce behind me, life gradually settled into a new kind of normal. The emotional storm had passed, and a sense of calm began to take its place. I focused on my children, my work, and slowly but surely, on rebuilding my life. One bright Saturday morning, I took April and Michael to the beach. It was one of our favorite spots, a place where we could leave our worries behind and simply enjoy the moment. The sun was warm, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore was soothing. "Dad, let's build a sandcastle!" Michael shouted, running towards the sand with a bucket and shovel. "Yeah, a big one!" April added, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I smiled, feeling a surge of happiness. "All right, let's make the biggest sandcastle this beach has ever seen." We spent hours working on the sandcastle, the kids' laughter echoing in the air. It was moments like these that reminded me of what truly mattered. The past was behind us, and the future was full of potential. As the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, we took a break and sat on a blanket, eating sandwiches and watching the waves. The kids chatted excitedly about their plans for the summer, their worries about the divorce seemingly forgotten for the moment. "Dad, can we come here every weekend?" April asked, looking up at me with hopeful eyes. I ruffled her hair affectionately. "Of course we can. This can be our special place." After we finished our picnic, I noticed a familiar figure walking towards us. It was Anthony, holding a surfboard and waving. He had been a constant presence in our lives, always there to lend a hand or a word of encouragement. "Hey, Jake! Hey, kids!" Anthony called out, grinning as he approached. "Uncle Anthony!" Michael shouted, jumping up to give him a high five. "How's the sandcastle coming along?" Anthony asked, dropping his surfboard and joining us on the blanket. "Great! Dad helped us build it," April said proudly. Anthony smiled at me. "You guys did a fantastic job. Mind if I join you for a bit?" "Of course not," I replied, grateful for his company. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, we sat together, enjoying the peacefulness of the moment. The children played nearby, their laughter blending with the sound of the waves. Anthony turned to me, his expression serious. "Jake, I've been meaning to talk to you. How are you really doing? I know this whole thing has been tough." I sighed, looking out at the horizon. "It's been hard, Anthony, but I think I'm finally starting to heal. The kids are happy, and that's what matters most. And having friends like you has made all the difference." He nodded, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you know, Jake, and you're doing an amazing job with the kids. Just remember, you're not alone." We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the waves and the setting sun. I realized that despite everything, I had a lot to be thankful for. My children, my friends, and the resilience I had discovered within myself. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, we packed up our things and headed home. The drive back was filled with the kids' chatter and laughter, and I felt a deep sense of contentment. That night, after tucking April and Michael into bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, reflecting on the journey we had been through. The pain of Amanda's betrayal and the subsequent divorce had been overwhelming, but it had also taught me invaluable lessons about strength, forgiveness, and the importance of moving forward. I looked up at the night sky, feeling a sense of peace. The future was uncertain, but it was also filled with endless possibilities. I was ready to embrace it, to build a new life for myself and my children, one step at a time. As I stood up to go inside, I felt a sense of closure. The past was behind me, and the future was waiting. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly hopeful. I knew that with time, everything would fall into place, and our lives would be filled with joy and new experiences. With a final glance at the stars, I walked into the house, ready to face whatever came next. My heart was full of hope for a brighter future, knowing that the best was yet to come. So that I don't have to wait ahead, I know that the worst is behind me. Now I am a happy father of 2 wonderful children. I am sure that now I have a white streak in my life.